Hello, everybody, and welcome. It's April 12th already. My goodness, happy springtime. It's level 2, and the first level 1 presentation from today, I did the energetic pathways and understanding that this is not just a standalone, disconnected aspect of time, that it's part of a whole time metabolism. We got started talking about the stellar network. There were some really excellent questions, and this was one of the comments that came up just as I took a little break and to stop my recording and drink some water. So Ben said, so we communicate telepathically with the solar network. And I said, yes. Oh my goodness, big yes, emphatic yes. Because we as emanations of the stellar network, we are like little, nerve feelers. I say this all the time. Photons are feelers. So it's photons have been sent out from the sun and they've coalesced here as physical matter. Maybe they became a plant, like a leaf on a plant. My brain goes faster than my mouth. And then maybe I ate that as my salad for my, breakfast this morning with some eggs. And then, because the chicken ate a bunch of sunlight too. And then all of that consciousness that came inside of me came from the sun. And then all of my thoughts in an, ideal, frictionless, perfect perpetual motion machine setup, the way that everything is supposed to be, would ceaselessly flow back to the sun, where the sun is like, or the stars are like, oh, that's what it tastes like. A pretty good, salad with some eggs on it. That tastes really good. And some balsamic vinaigrette. And would then be able to say, oh, that's what the experience is like of that. Photons are feelers. And we also spoke briefly, or I referenced briefly, the idea of quantum entanglement. That if this is the sun emanating photons, and this is a doorway. So this is my conception of the sun and the stars is different than how present day science on Earth's surface presents them. Science on Earth's surface says this sun or star in the sky is the end result of a series of like chemical and physical metabolic actions, like fusion and the creation of certain molecules and the release of certain energies. Science does not yet recognize consciousness, so it doesn't recognize that the sun or the star is a portal, like a place where the fabric of time, space, and consciousness has been pinched so much that those rules of the physical realm are no longer relevant. And what's happening is stuff is emanating from the singularity through that doorway. It's a doorway. It's a doorway and has lots and lots and lots of photons coming out of the doorway. But some of those photons stay with the sun and some of those photons fly away from the sun. And the sun can do these amazing, or the stars can do these amazing calculations. Just like we do these calculations between the tiny differences of our two eyes if you are a binocular person. If in order to see depth, what most people do is they say, hey, my right eye saw this and my left eye saw this, and I calculated using my perception the tiny differences between those two things so I can tell how far away something is. And this is the same type of calculation that the sun and the stars are doing. I sent out this photon, which had this experience here in the physical realm, and I kept this photon here with me. And here's the difference between these two photons. And I can do these complex calculations to determine, but they're not calculations done with Arabic numerals. Remember last week I did an extensive presentation about the origin of Arabic numerals, how it's just like an abstract number system, just like we're using language, ABC, D, E, F, G is an abstract pattern that we're using, and putting a system of interpretation on top of those abstract symbols. So Arabic numerals are really no different. However, we can use them as a way of describing reality. So in exactly that same way, there are these, abstract symbols. The sun is sending them away and then able to do these calculations. Hold on, drink. Okay, the other question that I wanted to get to over here, Ben says, is imagination used to fold space-time? And thanks for helping to explain this in simple terms. Absolutely. I'm happy to, we're doing yoga of the perception. We are really transforming the basic cosmology as the story of reality. Like all of these cultures on Earth have a cosmology, a story of what upholds reality. Are we living on the back of a giant turtle and we live on Turtle Island? Are we living on a planet? What shape is our planet? Where is the sun coming from? Where all these things are. But this is the idea of, like, if we have the correct story and uphold the correct narrative of where we came from and where we're going, then we can be empowered. So that's the whole idea of understanding this shape and the journey of energy around this shape so that we can be empowered and then transform it into this shape. So I was speaking about how, if this is, we had multiple singularities, but there are not many different singularities. They're the same singularity or the same 0th dimension located in different places, just like I had that little scarf, folding that scarf into a complex pattern where all of the stretched points all converge in the same point. And the question is about, is it imagination that is used to fold this fabric of space, time, and consciousness? And that's absolutely it. So, really, really perceptive question. I'm defining imagination as this higher faculty apparatus that some people call the third eye or the inner eye. It is the internal movie screen that we use to first envision what then becomes manifested as physical reality. So we're really doing this all the time with everything. We're doing it with our body, with your face. You first envision or imagine what your face looks like and what your body is shaped like. And then from that envisionment comes the physical structure of molecules and particles that actually conforms to your imagination. And same thing with the way that we've structured our physical body according to our imagination. Same thing with reality. Like, we imagine that we live in a house. We imagine that it has 90-degree angles. We imagine and envision these physical structures, and then we experience the whatever embodiment or manifestation of things that we have actually imagined. So imagination is the very same force that we can use if this is one singularity or convergence point here, like this is you, and this is the singularity or convergence point that is in the sun, or any other distant, seemingly other object or person. In order to fold that fabric of space, time, and consciousness, the muscle that we use to fold it is known as the imagination. So in this culture, imagination is heavily devalued and denigrated. We say to little kids, like, that's just your imagination. You are just imagining things. Imagination is worthless. Imagination is not real. No, imagination is worth everything. And imagination is like the foundation that all of this embodiment and manifestation comes from. So just as an artist or a musician, before you make the physical object or the physical song, you first imagine or envision that something can be made, and then you try to actually make the thing that you imagined. So the thing that we would like to, there's a very funny, good joke. So Chris Breakspear is imagining, he says he's changing it to Brad Pitt. He's imagining that he is shaped like the, actor that we know, Brad Pitt. And then the molecules of reality will transform in that way. So I like that approach. Let's say it like this. Let's say that each one of us has within us the potential for total health and beauty, because we're imagining this Hollywood actor as the example of total, physical health and beauty and, being well-formed. And that each one of us has that within us. The version of you that is as healthy and strong as an Olympic athlete, as intelligent as any, PhD genius, the greatest artist like, Picasso or, whatever, great painter, the best musician like Jimi Hendrix, that version of you exists. And then, Brandon is saying this is exciting. That's absolutely it. That version of you is also the version of you that travels on the central core timeline that we would call the ascension timeline, or the path of least likelihood, or the timeline that leads us out of the levels of constraint that we have been in the physical realm and into a level of less constrained existence. So when we begin to become the auteurs of our individual existence, like if you can write the story of your life, you can write blah, blah, blah was not shaped perfectly until this moment when all of a sudden everything changed because fill in the blanks, like Mad Libs, fill in the blanks of whatever made everything change. Like it could be flying rainbow lasagna, everything changed. And then I achieved my ideal form where I was as beautiful and perfect and Olympically healthy and fit and intelligent and artistically tuned in and creative as any of these, geniuses or super beings in our society. It's becoming a super being. And I call this is our heritage. It's our birthright. It's just like being able to see through time. It's something that society that we're moving out of would define it as being superhuman, like Superman, from the comics, like a man who can fly, a man who is strong, a man who is kind, like this is being a Superman, but that's really what we're all supposed to be. We all have this capacity to be super beings, and that we're achieving our superpowers. And this is what this birth of a new dimension, this painting that I have back here, is really all about. And we achieve those superpowers by using, well, one method to do it is to use a tool like the Flying Rainbow Lasagna to transform not only your energy field, which was toroidal, into a new set of possibilities, but also your DNA into a new set of possibilities. That what we're experiencing in our diminished state is like music that's not quite right. I'm going to play ugly music. That is not the right song. That is not the song of you. But what we're supposed to be playing is beautiful music. That's the right song of you. So each one of us is on that journey of figuring out what is the exact right, what are the exact, I'm grabbing my water. What are the exact right notes? What are the notes that I have to play with this body to experience total health and total vitality and to be able to run 100 miles a day drinking water? I actually know someone tangentially on Facebook who runs 100 miles a day. And will eat a box of Captain Crunch like at one sitting because she needs so many calories. It's like we all have that within us as our potential. It's a question of being able to write the story of how our body works and metabolizes in order to actually access it. So that's it's a Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Big takeaway, if this is the only thing that you take away from this, is about empowerment, is about transformation and metamorphosis, additional degrees of freedom, expanded reality. So there's also nothing inherently wrong or limiting with this toroidal shape. But what has happened is because our faculties of higher perception, like a steering wheel on our car, is not connected to the road. So everybody had to hit the membrane of death over and over and over, going at an angle like this, then changing, then we're going at this angle, then going at this angle, over and over and over, which is very, very long and cumbersome and does make you feel like, oh my God, just get this over with. Like, oh, pardon me. I totally understand that people have this sense of, it's burdensome to have to go through every single possible iteration. And it's not what was intended, not to try to wrong note, wrong note, wrong note, wrong note, wrong note. Finally the right note. We're finally playing the right note. It's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be like we know, because we can read the musical score. We know that is the note we're supposed to play. So that is also what starts to happen in our DNA, in our consciousness, in our imagination, in our metabolism. We can read the basic score of the music possibilities of time and play the right notes so that we know which note we're supposed to play for health and vitality and continued existence. So what that might mean to stay alive, it might mean you eat certain things. It might also mean like, don't drive your car at this moment because at this moment you'll get in a car accident and die. Like your body can be perfectly healthy and you eat plenty of salad, but if you hit your car into another car in the wrong way, then you're not going to be alive anymore. So timing is everything, just like in music. Timing is everything. So a lot of this is learning to read the musical score of the cosmos so that you can have the right timing and not run into any brick walls or not drive off the road or anything like that. Just drinking water. And let me get into how energy actually flows around the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Because what I was doing in level 1 was talking about how energy flows around that basic torus. Let's bring it up. Cool, it's even still there. So we had that basic torus shape, and in order to transform the basic torus shape into a Flying Rainbow Lasagna, what we do is begin to vibrate this whole thing here in a higher dimensional space, kind of making that convergence point, that is black scribble there where my cursor is. We make it jump this way, like towards the camera, and then away from the camera. So what that ends up, because what that ends up doing is we make, to make the torus shape, we have energy that is flowing around in these figure eights, going around and around like this. And it's going to be a messy drawing, but you kind of get the idea of what I'm talking about. Around and around and around. Okay, and let me just also make sure I can see the chat. If anybody's not muted, let me just make sure that you're muted. Okay, well, I'll get back to it in a moment. We also have this energy line that's going up the center here that I explained in level 1 is an oscillation of the singularity back and forth, and that it's actually like we're looking at a hula hoop on its side. We're looking at the edge of an actual, two-dimensional object that we're perceiving it as a line. I also spoke about how that energy flows from, here's the singularity here. It goes from the specific. Singularity is very specific. It's the convergence point. So in math talk, if here's a dot, everything converges at the convergence point. All of these lines go to the convergence point. In fact, that is the definition of one-point perspective. Like I just drew a little canvas and like, here's a doorway. That doorway in one-point perspective has all of these lines meeting at the convergence point. Wait, I should have drawn that a little bit better. Let me draw that better. The doorway has all of its lines meeting at the convergence point. Dot, 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 dot. All that line, if I extended it, would go all the way to that's one-point perspective. So all of these aspects of consciousness all meet at the convergence point. And then they all emanate outward from that central point into what we would call physical manifested reality. And then they return back to that convergence point. So we're endlessly going from the specific to the general and then back to the specific. And I also drew this little idea, like we've got this dot over here. We spiral outward, 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 outward. Now we're in the physical, big, fat circles. Now we begin to tighten up again and then go back into little tiny spirals. And then we go back to this. So it's an oscillation from very, very specific into not specific into very specific again. How does energy flow around the flying rainbow lasagna? All of this energy that is flowing in these basic patterns continues to flow in those basic patterns, which is just like saying if we're keeping a basic rhythm and melody, we're doing that in time. We're doing that. That's the basic rhythm and melody. But then we also can add on top of that, while at the same time, I got to have two hands here. Hold on a second. Oh, we're getting complex. This is very a lot. At the same time that we're doing, we can also do another musical line at the same time. That might be, I'm just making things up, but you understand, many layers of music. We're keeping that basic layer of music going, that is energy flowing around the toroidal shape, but then we're adding in the additional melody that is, you know, the complement that is the flying rainbow lasagna. I know that wasn't that perfect of an example, but you're with me, you're understanding. So now let me draw a flying rainbow lasagna shape. Get the right color so that you can see what I'm talking about here. So, you know, I always draw this curly edge of the lasagna noodle. And if here's the singularity up here, and here's the singularity down here. So this flying rainbow lasagna shape is the end result of the singularity jumping up and down over here, just like the singularity here jumps up and down between the boundary of two tori. And that's also how we can understand infinity, an infinite journey being experienced within the boundary of finite space. Here's one goalpost, here's the other goalpost, and we can endlessly bounce light or awareness or experience or photons back and forth between those two areas. Just like I spoke about the idea of Richard Feynman, energy coming outward from the sun, emanating outward into the physical, and then emanating back to the sun, and then emanating outward into the physical and emanating back to the sun. This is a two-way journey, and that it's a perpetual motion machine. It's an endless, frictionless journey of consciousness. Something that is infinite, that doesn't have to be like, we're starting here and just keep going on a very, very, very long road that just keeps having to be built. We don't have to experience infinity in that sense. We can experience infinity as a bouncing back and forth between 2 points. And that is also what we have with the flying rainbow lasagna. So just like, on this model over here, there are different layers, and the different layers are time moving at different rates. What we have with the red layer, this is the physical layer over here, and that's matter and time that is slowed down and coalesced to the point that we're actually looking at it as physical matter. It's stuff we can all touch and feel in the physical realm. And we have on top of that, the mammalian emotions. This is just a super rough sketch, but I'm drawing, you can see these are little half arcs. I'm not drawing a full arc. I'm making dots here. I don't know if you can see the dots. That would be, making a full arc that connects those two things together. There is not a connection between those two things. What happens is, let me take a different color. So energy is flowing in up here. And bring your attention to this basic torus up here. Energy is flowing around in these vortex shapes. And those vortex shapes also connect and interconnect, and we change to a different color. So for example, we can go halfway, can you see that blue, halfway around that guy, and then halfway around that guy, and then halfway around that guy, and then halfway around that guy. We can do all sorts of fun and interesting wacky hijinks with the way that we have energy flow around that torus. So when we're looking at this lasagna shape over here, we can have energy that flows around this outer edge, this outer perimeter. And now let me hold up the sculpture and hope you can see it in the thumbnail. I know the thumbnail might be really small, but I'll go back to my face and you'll see it. Where I'm tracing with my pen around the outer edge of the flying rainbow lasagna sculpture. That is one direction in which energy is oscillating in this model. We also have, of course, the direction of energy that's oscillating up and down. So again, we have energy that is based in a circular movement, just like in level 1, and also energy that is based in a linear movement, just like in level 1. But what is different in the flying rainbow lasagna is that this orange arc over here, which is this, using so many words to try to describe this, but I know that you guys are getting it. Where I just made that blue line, that half arc is this half arc where I just made that blue line. And then now where I'm making this little smiley arc down here, that little guy down there is the arc that's on the other side of this guy over here. So what has happened is we have deconstructed or pulled apart things that were formerly connected. And when the energy goes around this hoop or this half hoop, it then goes through, here I'm drawing a little doorway here, a little square doorway. It goes through a portal. And then it goes through another, so it goes across here, wait, let's make a black line to show traveling through interdimensional space, because that's, it's like a zone of non-being or a different higher dimensional space. It's not energy, there's no road there. There's no sidewalk there, you cannot walk there with your footsteps. So the energy has to go through a little tiny portal here, and then come out through another little tiny portal here. So it's jumped across this whole area here. It didn't even have to experience all of that, you know, black line. And then it goes in this smiley area. And then it jumps across this line where I'm making a squiggly blue line. It jumps. It goes through a little portal over here and jumps all the way across to here, and then makes this little frowny line. And then it goes through a portal and it jumps across this whole area. It doesn't actually have to make that whole entire squiggle. It jumps, goes through a portal here, and goes around this edge. And now I'll go back to my face and I'll show you what's going on the sculpture. So this, wait, to my face. Good. And just making sure that like you could see that and everything. Oh, good. Okay, good. Yeah, if you couldn't see my whiteboard or whatever, just tell me in the chat. So with this sculpture, you can see, first of all, this is a simplification. I have essentially one ski jump shape or one, you know, tulip petal shape over here. But I don't know if you can see it over there. Let's bring up a picture. Oh my goodness, a picture's worth 1,000 words. If I can find the right one. It's like the first one on my list. Okay, I'm bringing it up and do the screen share, and gotta wave your magic wands, guys, because sometimes this techno gremlins get in the way. Come on, magic wands, wave your magic wands, everyone, and poof, make it work. Make it work. Work. It didn't work. Okay, we'll try it again. Try it again, and if not, don't worry, I won't, you know, not like pulling teeth. It should work. I have this crazy thing. It's hooked up with the cable. It's supposed to connect to my iPad. I click the button, wave a magic wand, and poof. Come on, poof. You're supposed to work. Poof. Come on, everybody, poof. No, still not working? Here. This right here, this right here. I didn't mean to make this so challenging. No, still no poof? Let's try it one more time. Sometimes three's the charm. Let's try it one more time. I don't know why sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Boom, boom, boom. And then it says, do it. Do your thing. Ta-ha! Thank you, everyone, for waving your magic wands. That was incredibly helpful. So this is a picture of the sculpture that's actually over my shoulder in the studio. And it's just a little bit difficult for me to show you effectively. But you can see this is not the simplified version that I usually hold up. This is a bit more of a delicate sculpture, so I just leave it where it is. I just drew a big red line that's like the simplified version that I use. But you can see that in this more accurate depiction that there are separate layers, just like separate flower petals of each one of these levels of reality that are nested together. And so what we end up getting, let me just drink a little bit of water here. You can hear it in my voice. Rewind, 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 rewind. Let me find a good color that you can actually see. So on the one hand, we have energy that is flowing around the periphery. Ooh, it's a little bit hard for me to go. There you go. Zoom, 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 around and around and around and around and around the edge of the lasagna. And that red color or magenta color in this sculpture is representing the physical realm. You know, physicality, the material world, where your body, your chair, your shoes, your socks, all of that. This is where I was drawing before. You can't see that color. Let's try this one. Slightly better. That, what I was drawing before. Let's really find a color you can see. These blue lines, that's what I was drawing before. Hey, that's that little orange half smile. Here's the other little orange half smile. There's another one here that's hidden, but that would go then up there. Then it would go back down to here. Then it would go to the one that's behind here that you can't actually see. So what we have along this area where I am drawing a very big fat blue line, that area is lined with doorways, portals through which energy can hop. And the energy doesn't, where I'm making this blue squiggle now, that the empty space inside of each lasagna shape, energy doesn't actually flow there. It's a different dimension. It jumps through these little portals. It's like it's like instead of, if you're flying across the United States, like you're going from this coast to this coast, you're in an airplane. You fly over all of the states in the middle of the country that are mostly filled with cornfields and stuff like that. You don't actually hang out here. You don't actually go here, which is very different than, you know, if you were in your car. Now I'll show like driving across in your car, where you actually go through all of the states in the middle of the country where there's tumbleweeds and cornfields and, you know, lots of mountains and everything like that. And then you make it to the other side. So what we're doing with the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is not driving coast to coast and going through all of the interior states, all of this area in here. What we are doing is skipping it all. We're using interdimensional travel in order to have a different experience that is a higher dimensional experience of the way our genes can act and behave. So each one of these little flanges is analogous to the energy that is going around, you know, each one of these vortices that ends up in the wake of the purple moving dot, which is the singularity. So what I just drew, all of those little vortices and this little blue dot, that blue dot is the singularity. And it's just like a plane that is going back and forth, or a ocean-going vessel. And as it moves through the medium of, in this case, time, could be a fluid medium like water, or it could be something like the atmosphere like air, it leaves behind it this kind of cone-shaped wake. And that wake has materials that are moving at different rates. And I didn't draw each, you know, individual color of the rainbow there, but I color code the different rates at which the material, at which the energy or matter or potential is moving as these different, here we go, colors of the rainbow. And that the ones that are moving at the fastest rate are the area that's at violet, which is the singularity. And then as we move into the warmer colors, those are the ones that are moving at a slower rate. So I was trying to, you know, just use very clear analogies that the basic movement of energy around the torus, this basic figure 8, is maintained. And this basic movement or oscillation of energy back and forth between two singularities, and between this one between here and here, and this one between here and here, and this one between here and here. Drinking some more water too. Hold on one moment. Those basic patterns are maintained. That's what I was trying to give the example of with the music, but it was not a very perfect chord. But we keep that beat, we keep that music of the basic torus. But then, even while we're playing that basic beat of that, we add in a new part of the music that is the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And that's when we make that vibrate in a higher dimensional space. And I'll get to the chat question. I'm sure everyone is very perceptive and has very good questions. Okay, going back to my face. What's going on in the chat? Let's see the question. Poof. Thank you. Thank you for helping to poof the video, the picture on board. So yeah, that sculpture that I made it for, you can see it over my shoulder there in the studio. I made it for a math art conference that is, it's called Bridges. It's a wonderful international conference that I went to for 4 years in a row. And I shared the idea of the flying rainbow lasagna there. And the people that go there, it's very heavy on the academics, like teachers, computer scientists, and then there are a lot of artists and game designers that also go there. And the idea is, it's sharing things that are images and sculptures that are based in math. So there are even people that do intricate beadwork and intricate weaving or tapestry type of stuff. So yeah, and it took a huge amount of weaving of wire, and way more wire than I thought it would cost, in order to actually make that piece. And I did it as the most like scientifically accurate version of the flying rainbow lasagna that I could. And so to contrast with this one, this is a 3D printed one that I then, kind of comes as a blank piece, and I have to sand it down and prime it and paint it. And so here you're always looking at this as these simplified stripes that go around, but now we're understanding that each one is like a little tiny ski jump. Each one is a little tiny layer. And the magical explanation of what I'm trying to get across here today is that this edge, bring it closer where you can see it, where my pen is touching that edge is full of doorways, because the energy goes across that orange area, reaches that edge, and then it jumps. It jumps down to here. It doesn't actually travel across that whole entire area of the Midwest where they grow the corn. It just jumps through there. So what is happening as we are, and ordinarily the singularity that is at the center convergence point of this sculpture, it's not moving, it's not going anywhere. In order for this to transform into this, what we need to do, well, if I hold it like this, it would be like this. We start to move this in and out, or up and down. Let's turn it like this. We start to move this up and down, and as we do that, it creates this shape. Let me see if I can, hold on. I'm sorry I'm ducking off camera. I know this is incredibly rude. Hold on one moment. Let me grab this. Because this is my super fancy high-tech piece of paper that I use in order to describe this idea. So this little piece of paper is red colored pencil on one side, blue colored pencil on the other side, and it fits perfectly within the little vortex area of this yellow sculpture. So you can see that's like, if we were to wallpaper that little part of the sculpture, it would end up being shaped like this. And when we are making the sculpture jump up and down, or we're superpositioning it, that means on the one hand, I can be down here, but on the other hand, I can be down here. So half of the time, this little vortex is pointing downward like that, but half of the time, it is pointing upward like that. And if I fold this just right, I've used this before, this model before, so it might be review for anyone who's been in the class already, but it's a worthy review. You can start to see, even though I know it's just a piece of paper, it's not perfect, but you can start to see how this becomes the upward little curly edge of the lasagna, and then the downward curly edge of the lasagna. And you can also start to see, well, it might be difficult in this lighting, this is blue and this is red. So what used to be was all of the red connected together and all of the blue connected together. But when we start to superposition and make that jump up and down, now all of a sudden the red connects with the blue, what we are defining as outside. These two things that I'm touching with my fingers, those now both become the outside, quote unquote, of what we are experiencing. Whereas it used to be that the red was the outside and the blue was the inside. This is the mathematical explanation as to how we can begin to transform or make the inner and the outer communicate. And in this time sculpture, the inner and the outer is the past and the future. So it gives us greater freedom, because science just tells us the past is already set in stone and the future is something that we can't even talk about. It doesn't even exist. It wouldn't even recognize anything outside of the area where I'm moving my hand right now. It's like future doesn't exist. But if we can say, hey, future does exist and past does exist, and doing this little oscillation maneuver makes it possible for past and future to communicate together, then all sorts of fun and interesting things happen. So I also want to talk about this as the shape of non-duality. Like, I have about 10 more minutes left on this recording. The Buddhists of the Far East and the thinkers of the Far East are very big on the idea of non-duality and as this being a tool for freedom. And I was saying that in the Facebook introduction, the idea that, hold on, just drinking some water. When little kids start to become perceptive or start to become articulate about their perceptions, they start to ask really, really good questions. They're like, Mommy, Daddy, if God is good and God is everywhere and God is real, then how can good and evil both be subsets of God? and this is my answer, is in the shape of a sculpture. That we can say that this is the shape of God. We can say it's the shape of the divine. It's a central convergence point that then emanates outward, that coalesces into the physical, and then re-coalesces or re-expands, or however you want to say that with words, focuses back into the central convergence point. And when that is running perfectly, it's perfect. Again, there's nothing wrong with this shape and with the torus, but the way that humanity has been limited in the genetic expression, it has felt like, oh, it's so burdensome or whatever. There's nothing wrong with the torus shape. But the flying rainbow lasagna had to be invented in order to supersede the intentionally programmed limitations that were placed on us in terms of experiencing the torus shape. Wait, Cheeky, you want to come over here? Come over here. We got Dog Boss in the house. Okay. All right. We need like a few more minutes to finish up the class. Okay, girl? Get a few more minutes. She's been super patient. And I always give her one of those chew toys, but she always eats it super fast and then kind of sits around waiting. Both of these edges here represent unity consciousness, the 0th dimension, the crucial intellectual integument in understanding how this sculpture shape can give us freedom and can explain the existence of good and evil, is the idea that where my pinky is, that's a singularity. Where Cheeky's looking, that's a singularity. Yeah, we love you, girl. And then where this is also the singularity. It can have different viewpoints, though, dependent upon its position in different places. Just like my right eye and my left eye can have slightly different viewpoints. And that is appropriate to the totality vision of me as the total being. So the singularity is the total metabolic being. And when it has the singularity in this position over here, it is the position of total energy. Let's hold it upward. Position of total energy pointing upward towards the sky, towards the ceiling. And that means energy. That's like heat. When you get more energy, you get more molecular motion, you get more heat. It's light. Light is information. Light is also intelligence. Light is an organizational principle. And then where my pinky is now, pointing downward, let's make that entropy. And entropy I'm defining as lack of energy, lack of intelligence, lack of light, lack of illumination. Like if you have a room that is totally dark, you don't know what's going on in that room. It's lack of consciousness. So we have an oscillation of the singularity, like my pinky jumping back and forth between these two different positions. And in one position, it's like the lights are on and we're conscious and we're aware and we know what's going on. And the other position, we are unconscious. We are not aware. We are not moving. That's also unity consciousness, because now I'm going to talk about the Bose-Einstein condensate. Should I write that down? I've spoken about it on this class before, but I think it might be worthy of writing it down. Let's go to the whiteboard. Thank you for bearing with me while I click through and do important stuff. Let's write it down right over here. Oops. Bose-Einstein condensate. So that is a word for something that is a super dense form of matter. A form of matter that is going even slower than what we presently are experiencing. Like we're presently experiencing sunlight or starlight, light in general, that is slowed down slower than the speed of light. But if you took matter, like what we are made out of, our molecules, our atoms, and you slowed it down even more, slowed it down so much, basically made it cold. Like my room is not cold. I have lots and lots of molecules moving around and bouncing into each other and it feels warm. I'm wearing the t-shirt. If I took all the molecular motion out of my room, it would be very cold. It would be colder than Antarctica. If I brought it down to just a tiny fraction above 0 degrees Kelvin, it would be almost as cold as it is possible for molecules to be. And what would happen is that term that I just described, it's called a Bose-Einstein condensate. And that means that all the formerly individual atoms of the molecules all now start to be so slow that they're superimposed on top of each other. They all mush together on top of each other. And what happens is they start to behave as if they are one thing. They're not individual atoms anymore. They start to behave as if they are one atom. And this is a similar thing that happens when we reach that convergence point, the central convergence point, when we reach the state of total energy, when we go to infinity, when we get infinitely hot and infinitely energetic. We've essentially stretched the fabric of space, time, and consciousness to the point that we are fully accelerated. then we also achieve unity consciousness, which is this, we are on the journey towards that. That's what I was telling about in level 1, this concept of, so we all contain so many doorways to infinity, and your doorway to infinity can connect with someone else's doorway to infinity, essentially erasing the definition of what we use to describe ourselves as individuals. Because if all of the cells of my body and my DNA that's vibrating in portals to infinity are connecting with all the cells and DNA of your wonderful cells of your organism, then there's no distance between us. And it doesn't matter if you live in Australia and I live in, California. And it also doesn't matter if you live on Jupiter and I live on Earth. And it doesn't matter if you lived 10,000 years ago or if you will live in 1 million years. And it also doesn't matter if you're a dog or if you're a palm tree or if you're a microbe. That I am recognizing through this stretching of the perception of my consciousness, expanding and dilating my identity, that, wow, my portals of consciousness are intimately connected to and overlapping with your portals of consciousness. And then we begin to recognize that there's very little distinction between the two of us. So this is the next level in terms of the evolution of our consciousness beyond having an epidermis. Epidermis says, what's inside of my skin is different than what's outside of my skin. This is like the membrane and the boundary of me, or having a cell membrane where the intracellular goo is separated and distinct from the extracellular goo. These are necessary levels of development to get through individuation. But when you get to these even higher levels of inner development, you move beyond individuation and you move towards unity. But you do not lose any of your individuality, just like, I'm gonna play the little song again, we were playing this little melody, but then we added another melody on top of it. You keep your melody of individuality. You keep your melody of, oh, I'm this person here doing this. And I'm also that person doing that. I'm also those molecules doing that. This is what this transformation of, we're having a metamorphosis of consciousness, a redefinition of self, because that's what singularity is. It's unity consciousness. So that back to this idea of non-duality. We have clearly in this world, in this realm, some people who are acting from a loving presence and some people who are not. And it is highly erroneous to think that everybody needs to go to energy. Like we've got, remember, energy and entropy. This is like sending everybody, because everyone, like a lot of new age people, they're like this. They're like, send them back to the source, send them back to the source. But not everybody has enough gas in their car to get back to the source. And I can only do a very brief, truncated expression of this that I mostly do in a much more elaborate way as galactic history. Maybe we'll do that next week, but I'll figure it out when exactly I'm going to do that presentation. But the idea is that at that source, at that central convergence point here, a very, very long time ago, that there were some beings who emanated themselves that did not do so on the beat, which is when we're supposed to be emanated. This is big. That's according to the great composer says, what's the beat? I'm setting the beat for you. Get ready and go, be born. It's time to be alive. It's time to be aware. It's time to be aware of yourself and move through time. And if you're like, I'm not going to go on the beat, you don't get to be alive. These are like the basic fail-safe mechanisms of the cosmos in order to keep the time field alive, in order to keep the music tight in the band, right? So these beings, they were like, screw your music, composer. We're not going to do what you want us to do. We're going to be emanated. We're going to emanate ourselves whenever we want to. And we're going to use entropy as our fuel. And entropy, you could imagine that like you're on the top of a giant skyscraper and you jump off and you're falling backwards, but it's a really, really tall skyscraper. So you can fall backwards for a really long amount of time. Like now I want you to imagine someone has, jumped off of a skyscraper and it's so many millions of miles tall that they're falling backwards. And as they're falling backwards, like they have time to like make a little cup of tea, make a little breakfast, wash up the dishes, and then they're still falling backwards. That's what those consciousnesses are. Those are the beings that I call the occupiers of the interstices. And that energy in the interstices is supposed to flow around like a perfect circle. It's not supposed to get stopped. It's not supposed to be impeded in its flow. It's the flow of the membrane of death. That's what I was talking about in level 1. These abstractions that flow around like this. That's the membrane of death. You have energy flowing around the membrane of death, and it's supposed to just go endlessly and not be impeded. And what those beings did was they said, we're not going to go on the beat. We're going to go whenever we want to. We're going to use entropy as our fuel through time. And we are going to occupy the interstices and impede the energy that's supposed to be flowing back to the source. That's when you die. You're supposed to go back to the source. So drinking water. I'm not telling anyone all of this so that you can feel dismayed. Like there's a lot, we could just endlessly go into what's wrong. There's a lot, I'm debugging the system. We can spend a long time making a long laundry list of all the things that are wrong, like wrong, 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 wrong. That's what I'm more interested in are solutions. So we recognize that the membrane of death is filled with beings that were supposed to go towards entropy, and they're supposed to go towards entropy fast, not slow. Like let's take off the Band-Aid fast. And going towards entropy means, or achieving entropy means that you achieve lack of awareness. If this is total awareness, this is total lack of awareness. If this is feeling and seeing and knowing about stuff, this is not feeling and not seeing and not knowing about stuff. And those are two aspects of consciousness that are appropriate. This is not like saying anybody's being punished. No one's being punished, but this is a refinery where we're refining out the things that are supposed to stay and the things that are not supposed to stay. So it is. I'm one of the few people that speaks about this. It is a huge misnomer or expectation, like erroneous expectation, to say that everything is supposed to go back to the source. Everything is supposed to go back to God. It's like, no, actually some things are not the right music. Some things are not supposed to go back towards energy and towards awareness. They might have come and been emanated out here into the physical realm, but they're not, there's not enough gas in their car to drive them back to here. All that can happen is that they can lose energy and achieve unity consciousness at this end of the spectrum, which would be like becoming a Bose-Einstein condensate. So they're not supposed to get hot. They're not supposed to get energized. They're not supposed to get more aware. They're supposed to be less aware, less and less and less aware as they fall backwards off a giant skyscraper. They're supposed to lose consciousness. They're supposed to get slower and slower and slower as they lose heat and lose molecular motion, so that at a certain point they no longer move through time. That's what total entropy is. And this shape that I'm always holding up, this is the time field. It's made up of lots of things that are moving around all the time, moving all the time, except for the things that aren't supposed to be moving. There are some things that are supposed to be frozen, stuck. And when a being moves from, any level of energetic excitation into entropy, what happens is they get frozen. So it's like jumping off of the giant skyscraper and moving backwards into entropy, moving slower and slower and slower until there is no more movement. So this is a benevolent solution to I'm going to get to the chat, to the challenges of what do we do with these pesky occupiers of the interstices? Do we set up a giant like firing squad and shoot everyone, gallows or guillotines, chop off all of their heads, like interdimensional guillotines? What do we do with all of them? So my whole deal is that I invented with the Flying Rainbow Lasagna a mathematical solution. This is painless. To end suffering. This is not to create more suffering. And it's also not to create more duality, because you're like, wait, we can have energy and entropy, and then we're jumping back and forth. They're both unity consciousness, but they're different flavors of unity consciousness, just like my right eye and left eye have slightly different viewpoints. So there's no punishment in going to entropy. If there are personality characteristics of the total time field that are not worthy, like bad music, that's ugly music. That should not be being played. What we need to do with it is stop it from vibrating. If the music is made by the vibration of the atmosphere and it's moving through time and making stuff happen, how do we fix things? How do we solve things? Stop those things from moving through time. What we have been experiencing as embodied humans with the occupiers of the interstices, changing the genetic human code, cutting us off from the source, feeding off of our lower vibrational emotions, and even preventing us from, let's say, rising ourselves up out of those lower negative miasma of emotions. Those beings, you don't have to chop them up with a guillotine. You don't have to shoot them. You don't have to bomb them. You don't have to dip them in acid. All you have to do is take away all of their energy and put them into a totally entropic or without energy state. You freeze them. They no longer move through time. So instead of being like, you demon, I'm going to fight against you. Like, I'm going to stab you. I'm going to shoot you. That's giving energy to them. Don't shower them with energy. And energy is also attention. You don't give them attention. And so people have this erroneous presumption that you have to give them love. But love can be expressed differently to different organisms. Like I feed my dog meat because I love her. I don't feed her marshmallows. That is not food for a dog. That's not love. So these demonic beings or occupiers of the interstices, in order to feed them the right food, what you need to do is take away their energy. And what I envision in my own practice is kind of like, that old movie Ghostbusters, where there's the ghost, a residue of consciousness that's not supposed to be hanging around, but is hanging around. And you take your giant cosmic vacuum cleaner and you suck all of the energy out of there. Because all of the energy that those beings have, they have from stealing. They're actually not supposed to have energy because they are playing music that is horrible music, like this. They're not playing good music. If you want to have energy, you play good music. Play something beautiful. Play something nice, and then you get to have energy. If you have bad music, you don't get to have energy. So what they do is they compensate by stealing energy. I'll steal some energy from you, and I'll steal some energy from you, and from you, and from you, and from you, and I'll stay alive for 10,000 years stealing energy. That is totally against the intention of the great cosmic composer. And, that's not what performers are supposed to do on this stage. Totally against the rules. So that's another big thing here. I invented this as a way of fixing, like there's a lot of players gaming the system. It ain't right. We got to unhack the system. And this is my invention for being able to do that. And I encourage everyone to utilize it. So when you encounter those pesky occupiers of the interstices that are like, hey, I'm hungry. I want some energy from you. I don't have my own divine source. I want energy from you. I'm now speaking as the pesky turd on the interstice. You can say, not only, no, I'm not going to give you my energy, but you know what? I want to see your receipts. Where'd you get your energy from? Let's do an audit. Let's audit your account. This is what I like to do with demons. I say, hey, how can you be moving through time? You aren't playing the right music. You don't have a body. Where's your body? How can you be experiencing time? How can you be talking to me as an embodied person experiencing time? It's basically like if some mafia guy was like, yeah, I want to buy your gold watch. Be like, okay, you got $1,000. That's great. Where'd you get that money from? Did you steal it? Did you get it from like illegal activities? Show me the receipts of where you got your money from. And if you really followed that with the non-physical world, these, demonic residue consciousnesses, you could look at their energetic bank account. You could see, oh, first you raped this guy and you stole that energy from him. Then you raped this person, stole energy from there. Then you stole energy here, stole energy. It's all stolen energy. And that stolen energy really needs to be repatriated, meaning it is given back to the people that it was taken from, no matter what time or place it was taken from them. So let's say they stole that energy from a victim 10,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago. You could be like, okay, I'm going to suck back in all of your ill-gotten gains, the energy you're not supposed to have, and through flying rainbow lasagna, the folding of the fabric of space, time, and consciousness, I'm going to send that energy or money back to the guy that's supposed to have it. And you can do that beginning with your own journey, that each one of us has been, raped and diminished in terms of having energy of consciousness and genetic motion taken away from us. And you can say, hey, you know something? I'm going to go back and get back all of the energy that was unfairly taken from me. And if I encounter someone comes along and they want to do something, once you come into Aurora Land, like I'm the sheriff, I'm in charge. So it's like, oh, welcome to Aurora Land. Thank you for coming into my body. I'm now going to audit your accounts. Yes, stolen. Well, we'll just be appropriating all this stolen stuff and sending it back to the people that needs to go to. And this is my practice. I do this all the time. I do this on a sunny day while I walk around my neighborhood walking my little dog. Like, you can do it anytime. You can do it in traffic. You can do it while you're doing your exercise. You can do it all the time. And I would encourage everyone to do it all the time, because it's a very big mess. We got a big mess in the cosmos. We need a big bucket and a big mop. We need a lot of people to clean up. And we're cleaning up our own genetic array. You're cleaning up. When you do this work, basically a demon is coming along and saying, I want to eat off of you. You're like, no, not only are you not allowed to eat off of me, I'm going to audit your accounts, take everything that you're not actually allowed to have and send it back to the people that you stole it from. This is healing the time field. And this is the value of understanding the embodiment of non-duality. That is the flying rainbow lasagna. And as each one of us does this flying rainbow lasagna dance, this is how we heal and rectify the profound unfairness or injustices that have been going on for so long. Now I'm going to get to the chat. Thank you very much. Okay. Oh, thank you very much. Wait. So question from SJ, from Sarah Jane. Does Bose-Einstein condensate happen in both entropy and energy, or just entropy? What a wonderful question. It happens just in a state of entropy, or earth science in its present form describes it as happening only in the state of almost total entropy. So we have unity consciousness that can be achieved in two different energetic states, one of which is total energy, like all of the light in all of the world and all of the photons smushed together into one little tiny spot. That's total energetic awareness. And then we have the opposite, which is entropy, which is no motion, no heat, no intelligence, no consciousness, no awareness. And when matter is brought to those levels of coldness, that is what achieves the Bose-Einstein condensate. And although I'm not a total proponent of, science and the scientific viewpoint, science describes that at the end of this experience of the universe, like this particular timeline, that all the stars have metabolisms and they have limited lifespans, that all the stars that ever can be born or coalesce out of nebulae will be born, will metabolize, will live until they no longer can live and metabolize, and they die, and then they become a black hole. And those black holes are portals in the opposite direction. Instead of energy flowing out of the stars, this is now zoop, 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 like a long tape measure. You pull the tape measure out and then you release and it all snaps back in. The black hole is the drawing in of all of the energy that has been sent out over the star's lifetime. And it's not just going nowhere, it goes to somewhere. It's a portal that goes to another place. So all of those black holes suck out all of the energy, all of the awareness, all of the light, all of the heat, send it to another place. And then what you have left is just a lot of black holes, like a Swiss cheese of a lot of black holes, and a totally cold, entropic world. And that's going to happen in about 13 billion more years, according to science's model. Like we're about halfway through this, linear timeline. And so we don't have to wait 13 billion years for all of these pesky occupiers of the interstices to go to entropy. That's a very, very, very tall building that they jumped off of, that they can be falling backwards into entropy for the next 13 billion years. And then they'll finally splat on the sidewalk and they'll finally stop moving through time. But you know something? I actually have things to do. I actually would like to experience enjoying life now, not being constantly beset by these occupiers of the interstices or limited or impeded or mind raped or whatever. And we each have that prerogative. You don't have to wait 13 billion years to be happy. You can be happy now. Send them all into entropy instantaneously. You don't have to wait. So the next question, oh, thank you, Ben, so much. Ben says, incredible presentation today and connecting many concepts. I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you very much. This is very funny. Pedro says, occupiers of the interstices, OOTIs, and that the pesky occupiers can be the acronym POOTI. It almost sounds like poopy. It's perfect because I call them the turds. I think that's very, very funny. And it's really good and important to remain lighthearted, because part of the energy of Flying Rainbow Lasagna is it's a little bit rock and roll. It's rock and like you're not going to keep me down. Like I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm rock and roll. It's a little bit that, and it's fun. I mean, I make these candy colored rainbow things, not so that people will think that, it's worthless, but in order to exemplify, like, this can be super fun. That you don't have to get your ass kicked anymore. You can actually do some ass kicking, and it's fun. It's wonderful. It's a sense of empowerment. This is very good. Beth Major says, make them irrelevant. So that is the idea of sending these consciousness residues to entropy. They absolutely become irrelevant. They are not meant to be musicians in the cosmic band. You and I are. We conform to the music of life to the point where we have physical bodies, we eat physical food, and we have to do the right things in order to stay healthy and vital. If you don't do those right things, like if you stop metabolizing oxygen, you got only a few minutes before you're going to be dead. These occupiers of the interstices, they act very differently. They are like, they're like machine-based intelligences, or the Borg, or satanic technology users. They're like, they use technology in order to skirt all of these necessities that we willingly use like food and water and needing to have a metabolism and stay alive and have to rest. Like they try to subvert all of that, but it's not superhuman. They're subhuman in doing these, using technology in those ways and feeding off of others. They're more like vampires. You know, that's the whole reason why we have these myths of, you know, supernatural beings like vampires, that they're really based in what we've been experiencing culturally for many thousands of years. Okay, Pedro has a good question. He says, before taking back the stolen energy from demons, should we activate the Merkaba? Excellent question. So I do my Merkaba almost all the time. I wear it like, you know, my casual clothing. I wear it like, you know, wearing a pair of jeans. You know, I do it every day when I do my meditations. I do it throughout the day. If I feel burglars jimmying the lock, I'm like, not going to get into my jeans. Merkaba, like shields up. And yeah, it's absolutely appropriate to do it when you're doing the flying rainbow lasagna, you know, when you're vacuuming up the energy that they're not supposed to have and sending it to the other place. This flying rainbow lasagna dance, it's a dance within your DNA. The demons that are trying to impact your consciousness are also within your DNA. And when I say this to people, I'm not saying this to you so that you'll be afraid or be reactive or claw away at your face because there's demons inside, or don't shoot anyone else either because there's demons inside of that guy, I'm going to shoot that guy. Please don't do any of those things. The sad truth is that there's demons inside. And the wonderful truth is that we have a solution to no longer have demons inside and to be able to not only make ourselves safe, happy, and comfortable, but to rectify the entire unfair situation. The reason why demons are moving through time, even slowly, or not already in a state of total entropy, is because they stole energy. Like stealing money. If you're supposed to have $0 in your bank account, but you have $5 and you have $5 because you stole it from that guy over there, then it means you're still somehow, you know, financially solvent on some level. You're not supposed to be. You're not supposed to have even $5. That all of that is stolen energy. So this is a real solution as to how to get those beings that are not supposed to be in the time field out of the time field. They're not supposed to be in the band. They're not supposed to be making music. They're definitely not supposed to be having an impact on your mind or your consciousness or your cellular structure or your trajectory through time, because our mind determines what we're going to be doing from moment to moment, where we're going to be flying with our consciousness and with our body and with our, you know, spirituality and with everything like that. So let me get to this one more question. From Ben, you say, I wonder, are poorly done exorcisms only fueling these demons? Seems to be an industry within the Roman Catholic Church. Yeah, absolutely. I would be highly skeptical of, you know, the established Roman Church, which is itself run by demons or run by humans that embody demons and absolutely, you know, worships the occupiers of the interstices. So those occupiers of the interstices, some of them are not only like they're supposed to have $0 in their bank account, some of them have $10 billion in their bank account. Some of them have been consciousnesses that have been around for 10, 20 millions of years, and they've done a lot of rape, and they've stolen a lot of consciousnesses. And you know something? We need to audit their account. We need to be like, do you have receipts for this? Can you please show me where you got this energy from? And the truth is, when you get to higher dimensional levels of perception, like fifth dimension and higher, nothing is hidden. All of the threads and knots of the tapestry become visible. You not only see the surface, the front of the tapestry, events that are overt, but you see everything behind the scenes, how everything connects together. So it's easy to audit these guys. Be like, hey, show me your bank account. Oh, you stole this from this guy, this from this guy, this from this guy, this from this guy. That's the economy of hell. The economy of hell is entirely, it's like a pyramid scheme that is entirely based upon these disembodied, what we would call demonic entities that have stolen life force energy from beings like you and I that actually are embodied with a cellular structure. And we actually have to play good music to stay alive. They're like, I don't have to play music to stay alive. All I need to do is get energy from that guy. That guy's playing good music and staying alive, but I'll just take $10 from him and I'll just take $20 from that guy. And this is how they get their money. This is how they get their empire. And then they sit on top of all of that money that they've got, like, you know, dragons on top of their treasure, like, oh, I've got a lot of money, I'm big and wonderful. But if you audit them, then you can find out, oh, you're not actually supposed to have any of that. So yes, I would be highly skeptical of any established Roman Catholic Church and exorcism from them, because they're probably not actually removing any demons, because they actually are demons and they work for demons. So, and this is not to attack anybody's faith. You can see I wear a cross, and I'm not affiliated with any earth-based church or doctrine. I wear this in order to reclaim the symbol that Christ consciousness is very real. It is a part of each one of us. And it's also not something that it has to be part of an organized religion. It is something that we all have access to, that you don't have to be part of an avowed religion. You don't have to be a believer in the Bible, which, I do not take the Bible literally. I'm not a biblical literalist, all of that in order to say, I'm not trying to be demeaning to anybody that has a faith, because I think it can be very beautiful to believe in something larger than yourself, but also serious yellow flags of skepticism, like yellow flags, skepticism on high when it comes down to all the established churches, especially the ones that you got to pay. Like if you got to pay someone in order to get in touch with God, like yellow caution flags, watch out for that. And that's also why I am such an advocate for the idea that Flying Rainbow Lasagna is accessible to anyone with any amount of money in their bank account. A person with no money can still do the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. A person with $1 billion can do the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. One more question before I end the recording. What do you think of capitalism? Teddy asks. When a person or company makes money on the labor of another, is that energetic stealing, and are we just accepting it as normal? So I'll go into a whole teaching on another occasion, maybe along with galactic history, about non-physical entities like viruses, corporations, and what we would call having to work for a non-physical entity. So if I work for a boss, like my boss is like, build me a cabinet or something like that. I'm like, okay, I'll build you a cabinet. You pay me this much. It's not exploitive if it is a fair agreement between two people and they both benefit equally from it. That's love. If it's like, I'll pay you whatever, $6,000 and you build me a cabinet and it's an equal exchange, then it's the way it's supposed to be. It is exploitive if first of all, if you're working for a corporation that is a non-human, non-physical entity that is treated like a person, and also if that corporation does not pay you fairly for the energy that you have expended. So if it's like, I will pay you $6, you build me a cabinet, I'm a corporation, you work for me, you build me a cabinet for $6, and I will not give you any health benefits. That is exploitation. That is not okay. That's not the way it's supposed to be. And there are basic problems with the idea of selling your time for money, because we're supposed to be going up that central core timeline back to the source, to infinity, to be part of this divine consciousness. And instead someone's like, I'll pay you $10 an hour to dig a ditch, and all of a sudden you're going in this direction because you need $10 an hour so you can go to the store, so you can buy some groceries, because everybody's stuck within the socioeconomic matrix. So you have to be like, look, I'm either getting paid $10 an hour to fly towards the membrane of death, and then I get some groceries, or I continue on the pathway that I know I need to continue on, and I find some way in order to find the resources that I need by maintaining my integrity. So that, of course, is what I would encourage everyone to do. And I'm an artist and a musician. It's clearly what I'm doing with my life. And also it's like, I have my integrity and I have my time and I haven't hit the membrane of death. And also I'm still working towards levels of, profound abundance. So I'm in the same levels of challenge that everyone is here. Like, I don't want to have to drive towards the membrane of death because some boss is paying me to do something that I wouldn't ordinarily do. So it's not exploitation. Like if you're an artist or a musician and someone is supporting you by paying for the things that you ordinarily would do. Like I would paint this stuff if nobody paid me. But if someone wants to pay me for it, I'm still going to paint this stuff, but I'm just going to have a lot more money. Same thing with singing. Like I will sing the songs that I want to sing. No one's going to be like, I'll pay you $10,000 if you sing this song over here. Like that wouldn't be right. But if they're like, I'll pay you $10,000 to sing the songs that you want to sing, then that is right. So some aspects of capitalism are heavily distorted, and it's part of the domestication of the wild, undomesticated human form. But some aspects of it can be seen as fair if it's a fair and equal exchange. And in the realm that we're moving into, it's the realm of pure imagination, where people that have the greatest vision and the strongest vision of what they can imagine, those are the people that are going to get all of the actual physical currency. So I see that there is a possibility of redemption of, if not capitalism, like the idea of exchanging value for, like money or markers or something like that. It doesn't have to just be like, oh, no one has any money, no one has anything. We have to say money should go to the creators. Money should go to the people that actually get new ideas, express those new ideas. Because getting a new idea, it's like giving birth to a baby. And those ideas float around saying, somebody, like, I got an idea, somebody, like, make it happen. And if you are the actual person that is the conduit that makes it happen, you deserve to get paid. Like, I really believe everybody deserves to get paid, but get paid for the true you, for being the true person that you're supposed to be. Okay, so but she has a question further. But if you build the cabinet and they resell it, And with a markup, what is the extra money they charge when they did not put the labor into it? Yeah, that becomes exploitation. Because also, if someone could buy the cabinet directly from you as the creator and cut out the middle person, then that would be more of a fair form of capitalism. So I'm seeing more of that in terms of artists and musicians being able to share their information and creativity directly with the world. Like, I don't have to have a gallery that sells my prints. I can have my own print service online and people can buy prints directly from me. I get all the profit, as opposed to mostly it's a 60-40 split with galleries, and galleries take 60 and artists get 40. And that's also how come you can understand why some of the price tags in galleries are so high. Or same thing with the music industry, where, you know, the creator of the music might get a small fee, but then it is the distributor of the music that ends up getting the largest proportion of the profits. And none of that is acceptable or the way it's supposed to be. Pedro says running the company requires energy, so that deserves some compensation. And I agree, it does deserve some compensation, but it's like if you have a gallery, you know, you have to keep the lights on, you have to pay your rent, you have to do that, but do you have to buy a lavish Lamborghini or something like that? Like, the answer is no. So we're restructuring the economy, and these are really excellent questions to ask about what is the fair way to be compensated for the creative energy that you expend. Yeah, and Teddy is agreeing with me, like a music agent is usury. So yeah, the idea, even we could talk, when we talk about usury, we can even talk about like charging interest on a loan. That if all that I do, if I'm not actually creating anything, but all I do is like, I'm going to loan out $5 to you, and then you have to give me back $7 or $10, then it's like, I didn't really create anything. I didn't really do anything. All that happened was I had money and I got you to agree to borrow money from me and then give me back more. Like, that's not real creativity. And there's a whole segment of society in banking and finance that makes lots and lots of money by doing stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not much into the idea of charging interest for people, or, you know, in terms of loans as a way of being abundant. And like, even in terms of cryptocurrency, trading versus mining, I see trading as being very parasitic. It's just saying, this is worth this and this is worth this, and let's translate this into this, and then we'll get some money off of this, as opposed to mining, which is like, let's do a new calculation that's never been done before, and then that is something that is considered a valuable asset that I can sell or give to someone else. So yeah, I think these are all really wonderful questions to ask in terms of restructuring society. Let me end the recording for right now, because I'm getting to be at that point where it's going to be a really long upload. Thank you to all of the excellent questions of the participants here. And I love the comments that people do in YouTube. Keep commenting. I'm super behind on my responses. I need to get to my responses. But if you have any other questions, I do eventually respond and try to clarify whatever's going on. And please, I encourage everyone to enroll. Today's presentation was not tied to any of the particular formalized lessons that I have in either level 1 or level 2. It felt like what I needed to say in order to clarify. However, the recorded lessons are very worthwhile in terms of delving into. So let me just end the recording for right now with a profound thank you to everyone who's been supporting my work too. So hold on one moment. Thank you.